pregnant and abandoned by her billionaire ex. She never knew he owned the company she joined. "You've been watching us this whole time?" Marianne's voice didn't just shake. It broke. She looked down at the photo album in her hands, at a picture of her son's first steps. A picture she hadn't taken. A moment she thought she'd experienced alone. She looked up at Jackson Westfield, billionaire CEO, and the man who had vanished the day she told him she was pregnant. He was no longer the man she had once loved. He was a ghost who had been watching her struggle from the safety of his billion-dollar empire. Have you ever discovered the person who broke your heart has been secretly watching your life from the shadows? What would you do if the man who abandoned you during pregnancy was suddenly your boss, holding your financial future in the same hands that once pushed you away? When betrayal and opportunity collide, how do you choose between protecting your heart and securing your child's future? Stay with me to discover how one woman turned her greatest heartbreak into her most powerful comeback, and the unexpected choice she made that changed everything. Hey my queens. Life has a way of bringing our deepest wounds right back to the surface just when we think we've healed. That moment when your past and present collide can feel like the ground is crumbling beneath your feet. I see you, the woman who rebuilt herself from ashes, who turned pain into purpose, who created something beautiful from betrayal. Today's story is for every sister who's had to face her heartbreak in the boardroom, who's had to choose between pride and practicality, who's wondered if forgiveness means forgetting. Remember this, your strength isn't measured by never falling, but by how magnificently you rise after each fall. Your scars tell a story of survival that no one can rewrite, not even those who caused them. Marianne Blackwood smoothed her burgundy blazer as she walked through the gleaming atrium of Meridian Innovations headquarters. Her first day as marketing director at one of Atlanta's fastest-growing healthcare tech companies. A fresh start for her and Noah after a brutal year that had included her mother's passing and the messy end of a brief relationship with a man who couldn't commit. The job offer had seemed like divine intervention. Excellent salary, flexible hours for a single mother, and a chance to rebuild their lives in a new city. Throughout the interview process, she'd spoken with HR representatives, the marketing VP, and the COO, but never the mysterious founder and CEO, known only as J. Westfield in the company materials. Marianne Blackwood? A tall woman with a sleek silver bob approached, hand extended. "I'm Eleanor Vance, VP of Operations. We spoke on the phone during your interviews." "Of course," Marianne smiled, shaking the offered hand. "Thank you again for this opportunity. I'm thrilled to be joining the team. We're delighted to have you. Your work at Phoenix Digital was impressive, and we're looking forward to seeing what fresh perspectives you bring to our marketing strategy." Eleanor gestured toward the elevators. "Let me show you to your office and introduce you to your team." As they rode to the 5th floor, Eleanor briefed her on the day's schedule, team introductions, HR orientation, lunch with the department heads. "And then at 4 you'll meet with Jackson. He likes to personally welcome all senior staff." "The CEO?" Marianne asked, curious about the man who ran such an innovative company. "Yes, Jackson Westfield. He's been abroad for several years overseeing our international expansion, but he returned to Atlanta permanently about 6 months ago. Brilliant man, though a bit intense at times." Marianne nodded, making a mental note to prepare for the meeting. First impressions with the CEO would be crucial for her success at Meridian. The morning passed in a blur of new faces, paperwork, and information. Marianne's marketing team seemed competent and welcoming, if a bit too reliant on strategies that had worked in the past. She could see immediately where improvements could be made, how to better position Meridian's groundbreaking healthcare software to the hospitals and medical practices that were their primary clients. By the time she returned to her office after lunch, Marianne had drafted initial thoughts on refreshing the company's marketing approach. She wanted to make a strong impression when meeting the CEO, show him that she was already thinking about how to add value to the organization. At 3:55, her office phone rang. "Ms. Blackwood." The voice belonged to a young man. "This is Tyler, Mr. Westfield's assistant. He's ready for you now, if you'd like to come up to the 8th floor." "I'll be right there," Marianne said, gathering her tablet with her notes. In the elevator, she checked her reflection in the polished metal doors, smoothing a stray strand of chestnut hair back into her sophisticated bob. The woman who looked back at her was poised, professional, ready to impress her new boss. The 8th floor was quieter than the bustling marketing department below. Tyler, a fresh-faced young man with kind eyes, greeted her as the elevator doors opened. "Ms. Blackwood, welcome to Meridian. Mr. Westfield is expecting you. Right this way, please." Marianne followed him down a corridor lined with glass-walled conference rooms, mentally rehearsing her introduction and key points about her marketing vision. At the end of the hall, Tyler knocked on a door of dark wood, then opened it without waiting for a response. "Ms. Blackwood is here, sir." "Thank you, Tyler. That will be all." Something about that voice made Marianne's steps falter. A voice she hadn't heard in 4 years but would recognize anywhere. Couldn't be. Tyler stepped aside, and Marianne walked into the office, her carefully prepared introduction dying on her lips as she saw the man standing behind the massive desk of reclaimed wood. Jackson Westfield, the man who had walked away from her and their unborn child 4 years ago to pursue his career abroad. The man who had promised to return after a year, whose calls and video chats had grown less frequent until they stopped altogether. The man whose son now asked why he didn't have a daddy like other kids. For years collapsed into nothing as she stared at him, unable to process the reality before her. He was still unfairly handsome, though his once jet-black hair now showed distinguished touches of silver at the temples. The boyish charm had matured into something more solid, more grounded. But his eyes, those remarkable eyes that shifted between gray and blue depending on the light, were exactly as she remembered, and right now they held no surprise at seeing her. "Marianne," he said, coming around the desk but stopping several feet away, as if uncertain of his welcome. "It's good to see you." The casual greeting, as if they were old friends who had simply lost touch, ignited a spark of anger in her chest. "You knew," she said, the realization dawning. "You knew I was applying for this job." Jackson had the grace to look slightly abashed. "Yes. How long?" When he hesitated, she pressed, "How long have you been keeping tabs on me, Jackson?" He gestured to the seating area by the windows, away from the formality of his desk. "Please sit. We have a lot to talk about." Marianne remained standing. "Answer the question." Jackson sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. "I never lost track of you, Marianne. Not completely." "What does that mean?" "It means that even when I was in Singapore, then Tokyo, then Seoul, I made sure you were okay. That you had what you needed." The implication of his words hit her like a physical blow. "The anonymous donation to my mother's medical fund when she got sick. The scholarship that covered my MBA program when I couldn't afford the tuition. That was you." Jackson nodded, his expression unreadable. "Among other things." Marianne felt dizzy with anger and confusion. "So what, you've been playing some kind of secret benefactor all these years? Watching from afar while I struggled to raise our son alone." "I wanted to come back," Jackson said, his voice low and intense. "So many times, I almost booked a flight, but every time I thought about it, I remembered how I'd left, what I'd said. I convinced myself you were better off without me, that Noah was better off without a father who had chosen his career over his family." "Noah," Marianne repeated, a new realization dawning. "You know his name." "I know a lot more than his name, Marianne." Jackson moved to his desk, opening a drawer and pulling out what appeared to be a photo album. He hesitated, then held it out to her. "I know he loves dinosaurs and superhero stories. I know he's allergic to strawberries but loves blueberries. I know he started talking early but was cautious about walking. I know he has your laugh and my eyes." With trembling hands, Marianne took the album and opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, chronicling Noah's life from infancy to recent months. Noah in a hospital bassinet, just hours old. Noah taking his first steps in her mother's backyard. Noah on his first day of preschool in Chicago, his backpack almost as big as he was. "How did you get these?" she whispered, horrified and fascinated in equal measure. "Some from social media, yours, your friends. Some from the reports." "Reports?" Marianne looked up sharply. "What reports?" Jackson at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. I hired someone to check in periodically, make sure you both were safe, had what you needed. You had us followed? The violation of it made her feel physically ill. Not followed, just monitored. From a distance. That's not better, Jackson. Marianne slammed the album shut, thrusting it back at him. You had no right to spy on us, to insert yourself into our lives without my knowledge or consent. If you've ever had your past come back to haunt you, hit that like button and share in the comments. The confrontation in Jackson's office faded as Marianne's mind pulled her back to where it all began, to a snowy April evening in Chicago 4 years earlier, when 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test had changed everything. She'd been standing in her tiny apartment bathroom, watching the second line appear with a clarity that seemed to crystallize her entire world. She and Jackson had been together for just over a year, a whirlwind romance that had begun when she'd spilled coffee on his custom suit at the cafe where she worked part-time while finishing her marketing degree. Instead of being angry, he'd laughed, asked for her number, and taken her to dinner at a restaurant so expensive she'd had to Google the silverware placement beforehand. Jackson Westfield wasn't just wealthy. He was brilliant, driven, and unexpectedly kind. The son of a ruthless business magnate, he'd broken away to start his own company, Meridian Innovations, with a vision of healthcare technology that could genuinely improve lives. Marianne had fallen for his passion as much as his charm, for the way his eyes lit up when he talked about making a difference, for how he listened to her ideas as if they mattered. That night, she'd waited until after dinner to tell him, her hands trembling as she placed the test on the coffee table between them. I'm pregnant, she said simply, watching his face for a reaction. Jackson had gone very still, his eyes fixed on the plastic stick. You're sure? 3 tests, all positive. He'd risen from the couch, pacing to the window that overlooked the city lights. For long minutes, he said nothing, and Marianne felt her heart constricting with each passing second. Jackson? She finally prompted, her voice small. When he turned back to her, his expression was unreadable. This is unexpected. I know it's not what we planned, she said carefully. But I just got the call yesterday, he interrupted. The Singapore expansion. The board approved it. Marianne blinked, trying to follow the abrupt change in topic. That's great. Isn't it what you wanted? They want me to lead it personally, to be on the ground there for at least a year, maybe longer. The implications settled over her like a cold fog. When would you leave? 3 weeks. 3 weeks, she repeated numbly. And what about this? She gestured to the test. Jackson ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture that had once made her heart flutter but now filled her with dread. We can make it work long distance. It's only for a year. By the time I get back, the baby will still be small, and we can figure things out then. Figure things out? Marianne echoed, disbelief coloring her voice. Jackson, this isn't a business problem to solve later. This is our child. I know that, he said, a flash of irritation crossing his face. But this expansion is everything I've been working toward. It's the difference between Meridian being a promising startup and a global healthcare leader. And that's more important than being here? Than us? It's not about importance, Jackson insisted, coming to sit beside her again. It's about timing. This opportunity won't come again. The baby will still be here when I get back. Marianne felt something cold and hard forming in her chest. And what if I need you before then? What if there are complications? What if I just want the father of my child to be present during my pregnancy? We'll video chat every day, he promised, taking her hands. I'll fly back for important appointments. It's not ideal, but it's just temporary. But even as he spoke, Marianne could see it in his eyes, the way they kept drifting to the middle distance, already planning, already moving on to the next challenge. She'd seen that look before when he talked about his company, his vision. She'd always admired his focus, his drive. Now, for the first time, she feared it. What if it's not temporary? She asked quietly. What if 1 year becomes 2? What if there's always another expansion? Another opportunity too good to pass up. Jackson's expression hardened slightly. What are you asking me to do, Marianne? Turn down the opportunity I've been working toward my entire career? The board unanimously approved me to lead this. Do you understand what that means? I'm asking you to be a father, she said simply. To be here. I can be both, he insisted. Just not simultaneously, not right now. The conversation had circled for hours, growing increasingly tense until Marianne, exhausted and heartbroken, had finally asked him to leave. Think about what you really want, she told him, because I need to know if I'm doing this alone. 3 days later, he'd returned with a compromise. He would go to Singapore as planned, but only for 6 months instead of a year. They would make decisions together about the baby via video calls. He would send money, support her financially, fly back for the birth. It had seemed reasonable on the surface. Marianne had wanted to believe him, wanted to believe in them, but something in her gut had whispered that once he left, the distance would become more than physical. She'd been right. The silence in the CEO's office was heavy, broken only by the hum of the city 80 stories below. Marianne's hand still stung from slamming the photo album onto the reclaimed wood desk. I know, Jackson said, taking the album and setting it carefully on his desk. I know it was wrong, but I couldn't just cut you both out of my life completely. And after a while it became a habit, a connection to the life I should have been brave enough to choose. Marianne paced to the window, needing distance from him, from the intensity of his gaze and the implications of his words. Outside, Atlanta sprawled beneath a clear blue sky, oblivious to the emotional storm raging in this quiet office. Why now? She asked finally, not turning around. Why bring me into your company now after all this time? She heard him move closer, stopping a few feet behind her. Because I'm done hiding, done watching from a distance. I came back to Atlanta 6 months ago, after my father died. I'm not answerable to him anymore, not bound by his threats. Threats? Marianne turned to face him, confusion mingling with her anger. Jackson's expression darkened. When my father found out about you, about us, he made it very clear what would happen if I didn't end things. He threatened to devalue the company's stock and tie the estate up in litigation for decades if I distracted the brand with what he called a middle-class scandal during our international expansion. A middle-class scandal, Marianne repeated, the words bitter on her tongue. That's what I was to him? What our child would have been. My father was a cruel, controlling man who saw people as assets or liabilities. Nothing more, Jackson said, his voice tight with old anger. The company was everything to him, his legacy, his immortality. He would have destroyed it rather than let me run it my way. So you chose the company over us? Marianne said flatly. I thought I could have both, Jackson admitted. I believed if I went abroad, proved myself with the expansion, I could come back stronger, strong enough to stand up to him, to protect you and our child from his interference. But once I was away, he shook his head. The distance made it easier to be a coward, to tell myself I was doing the right thing by staying away, by not dragging you into my family's toxic legacy. Your father has been dead 6 months, Marianne pointed out, and you're only reaching out now? What about the 3.5 years before that? What about when Noah was born, when he was learning to walk and talk, when he was asking why other kids had daddies and he didn't? I was afraid, Jackson said simply. Afraid you'd never forgive me. Afraid I'd be a terrible father. Afraid of the mess I'd made by leaving in the first place. And yes, afraid of my father's retaliation if I defied him. He had ways of finding out everything, controlling everything. So instead of facing that fear, you what? Decided to manipulate me into working for you? Thought you could ease your way back into our lives through my career. I didn't manipulate anything, Jackson protested. Your resume came across my desk through normal channels. When I saw your name, I knew it was a sign, a chance to make things right. Make things right, Marianne repeated, a bitter laugh escaping her. Do you have any idea what these 4 years have been like? The nights I spent wondering if you were ever coming back. The times I had to explain to Noah why his father wasn't at his birthday parties. The looks of pity from other mothers at playgroup. "I'm sorry," Jackson said, and for the first time, Marianne saw genuine anguish in his eyes. "I know those words aren't enough. Nothing could be enough. But I am sorry, Marianne. More than you can possibly know." The sincerity in his voice made something crack inside her. A hairline fracture in the protective shell she'd built around her heart. "I need to go," she said abruptly. "I need to pick up Noah from school." "Of course." Jackson stepped back, giving her space. "But Marianne, please don't quit. The job is yours, regardless of our history. You earned it on your own merits." She almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "You expect me to work for you? After everything? I expect you to do what's best for you and Noah," Jackson said quietly. "This position comes with excellent benefits, flexible hours, and a salary that's 20% higher than your last job. You'd be a fool to walk away from it because of me." The pragmatic part of her, the part that had learned to make hard choices as a single mother, knew he was right. The job was perfect. The kind of opportunity that came along rarely, if ever. Walking away would be cutting off her nose to spite her face. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "That's all I can promise right now." Jackson nodded, relief evident in the slight relaxation of his shoulders. "That's fair. Take all the time you need." He hesitated, then added, "And Marianne? I'd like to meet him. When you're ready. If you're ever ready." The simple request, spoken with such tentative hope, caught her off guard. For 4 years, she had imagined this moment. Confronting Jackson, making him understand what he had thrown away. In her imagination, she had been coldly triumphant, showing him the wonderful child he had abandoned, the strong woman she had become without him. The reality was messier, more complicated. The man before her wasn't the ambitious, somewhat selfish young entrepreneur who had left her. He was older, more grounded, his eyes carrying a weight of regret she hadn't anticipated. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Noah he's sensitive, thoughtful. He feels things deeply. I won't let him be hurt." "I would never hurt him," Jackson said, his voice rough with emotion. "He's my son. Biology doesn't make you a father, Jackson. Presence does. Choices do. Then let me make better choices now," he pleaded. "Let me be present now." Marianne gathered her composure, straightening her shoulders. "I need to go. We'll continue this discussion another time." As she turned to leave, Jackson called after her. "Marianne." She paused, hand on the doorknob. "Thank you," he said simply, "for raising our son. For being everything I should have been but wasn't." She didn't turn around, couldn't bear to see the emotion she heard in his voice. Without responding, she opened the door and walked out, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Have you ever had to choose between your heart and your head? Comment below with your experience. The preschool was a cheerful building with a playground visible from the parking lot. As Marianne pulled in, she could see groups of children playing under the watchful eyes of teachers. She scanned the yard anxiously, finally spotting Noah on the swings, his dark curls unmistakable even from a distance. For a moment, she simply sat in her car, watching her son, their son, as he pumped his legs, trying to go higher. He was so beautiful, so perfect. Every day with him was a gift, even the hard ones. How could Jackson have walked away from this? How could he have chosen his father's approval and the company over the chance to watch his child grow? But as she watched Noah laugh with another child, Marianne felt the first stirrings of something unexpected. Not forgiveness, exactly, but perhaps understanding. Jackson had been raised by a man who saw people as assets or liabilities, who would threaten to destroy his own company rather than allow his son personal happiness. Was it any wonder Jackson had made the choices he did, trapped between his father's threats and his own fears? Understanding didn't erase the pain or justify the abandonment, but it did complicate the neat narrative of villain and victim that Marianne had constructed over the years. She got out of the car and walked toward the playground. When Noah spotted her, his face lit up with a smile that never failed to melt her heart. "Mommy!" he called, jumping off the swing and racing toward her. "I made a friend today. His name is Ethan and he likes dinosaurs too." Marianne knelt to catch him in a hug, breathing in the scent of playground dirt and the fruity shampoo she'd used on his hair that morning. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I want to hear all about your day." As they walked hand in hand to the car, Noah chattering about his new friend and the classroom turtle named Sheldon, Marianne found herself thinking about Jackson's request to meet his son. For 4 years, she had been both mother and father to Noah, protecting him fiercely from the pain of abandonment. The thought of opening that door, of allowing Jackson into their carefully constructed world, terrified her. But looking down at Noah's animated face, at the eyes so like his father's, she wondered if she had the right to keep them apart. If her own hurt and anger should determine whether Noah knew his father. "Mommy, are you listening?" Noah tugged at her hand. "I asked if we could get ice cream." Marianne smiled, pushing the heavy thoughts aside for now. "Yes, we can get ice cream. It's been a big day for both of us. I think we've earned it." As they drove to the ice cream shop, Marianne's phone buzzed with a text message. She checked it at a stoplight, her heart skipping when she saw it was from an unknown number. "I meant what I said. The job is yours regardless of what you decide about us. But I hope you'll give me a chance to explain everything. To make amends." Jay. How had he gotten her personal number? But of course, he'd been monitoring them for years. The violation of privacy still stung, but somehow less sharply than before. Perhaps because now, at least, he was being direct rather than skulking in the shadows of their lives. "Who's that, Mommy?" Noah asked from the back seat. Marianne slipped the phone back into her purse. "Just work stuff, sweetheart. Do you like your new job?" The question was innocent, but it carried the weight of their future. Did she like her new job? Could she work for Jackson? See him every day? Navigate the complex emotions his presence stirred in her? Or should she walk away, start over again, continue the pattern of rebuilding that had defined the last 4 years? "I think I might," she said finally. "It's complicated, but I think it might be good for us." "That's good," Noah said with the simple acceptance of childhood. "I like my new school too, especially Sheldon the turtle." Marianne smiled at him in the rearview mirror, her heart full of love for this little person who had been her anchor through the storm of the past 4 years. Whatever she decided about Jackson, about the job, it would be with Noah's well-being at the center. The memory of that first night alone in her Chicago apartment after Jackson left for Singapore washed over her as she drove. How she'd curled around her still flat stomach, whispering promises to the tiny life growing inside her. "We'll be okay," she'd said through her tears. "I'll be enough for both of us." And she had been. Through morning sickness and doctor's appointments, through the terrifying early labor that had sent her to the hospital at 34 weeks, through the sleepless nights and first smiles and wobbly steps, she had been enough. But was that the same as being what was best for Noah? The question haunted her as they sat in the ice cream shop, Noah happily demolishing a scoop of chocolate chip while telling her more about his day. It followed her home, through dinner and bath time and the bedtime story about a brave little dinosaur who saved his friends from a volcano. "Mommy," Noah asked as she tucked the covers around him, "will I meet my daddy someday?" The question, coming out of nowhere, stole her breath. "Why do you ask that, sweetheart?" Noah shrugged, his small fingers playing with the edge of his dinosaur-printed comforter. "Ethan said everyone has a daddy. He said maybe mine is lost and doesn't know where to find me." Marianne's heart constricted. She'd always been honest with Noah about his father, in age-appropriate ways. She told him that his daddy wasn't ready to be a parent when Noah was born, that he had important work in another country. She'd never spoken badly of Jackson, never wanted Noah to feel unwanted or rejected. "Your daddy isn't lost," she said carefully. "He knows where we are. Then why doesn't he come see me?" The simple question held such innocent pain that Marianne had to swallow hard against the lump in her throat. "It's complicated, baby. Grown-up things sometimes are. But it's not because he doesn't care about you. Does he know I like dinosaurs?" Marianne thought of the photo album in Jackson's office, the evidence that he'd been watching from afar all these years. "Yes," she said softly. He knows. Noah seemed to consider this, his small face serious in the glow of his night light. I think I'd like to meet him someday, to see if he likes dinosaurs too. Maybe someday, Marianne said, leaning down to kiss his forehead. Now sleep tight, my brave boy. I love you to the moon and back, and to the stars and all the way home. Noah finished their nightly ritual, his eyes already heavy with sleep. As she closed his bedroom door, Marianne leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the weight of the decision before her. The practical choice was clear: take the job, secure their financial future, give Noah the stability he deserved. But could she work with Jackson day after day? Could she trust him not to hurt Noah if she allowed him into their lives? Her phone buzzed again with another text from Jackson. I know I have no right to ask, but please don't make a decision about the job tonight. Sleep on it. We can discuss terms that make you comfortable, different reporting structure, minimal interaction with me if that's what you want. Just please don't walk away because of our past. Marianne stared at the message, feeling the walls she'd built around her heart trembling. For years ago, she'd been so certain of who Jackson was: ambitious, selfish, unwilling to sacrifice for family. But the man she'd seen today, with regret etched into the lines around his eyes, didn't quite fit that narrative. People changed. She had changed, transformed by motherhood and struggle and triumph. Was it so impossible that Jackson had changed too? The next morning, after dropping Noah at preschool with promises of pizza for dinner, Marianne drove to Meridian Innovations with a decision made. She would take the job, but on her terms. She would establish clear boundaries, both professional and personal. She would be cordial but distant with Jackson. And she would take her time deciding whether to allow him to meet Noah. Eleanor Vance met her in the lobby, relief evident on her face. I'm so glad you came back. Jackson told me there might be some complications with your employment. There are, Marianne said frankly, but I believe we can work through them professionally. Eleanor studied her with shrewd eyes. You know him from before. It wasn't a question, but Marianne nodded anyway. Yes, it was a long time ago. I won't pry, Eleanor said, leading her toward the elevators. But for what it's worth, he's not the same man he was when he left for Singapore 4 years ago. That experience changed him, humbled him, I think. And his father's death 6 months ago. Well, let's just say he's been doing a lot of soul-searching since then. Marianne wasn't sure how to respond to this unexpected insight, so she simply nodded again. I'd like to meet with him this morning, if he's available, to discuss the terms of my employment. He's cleared his calendar, Eleanor said with a small smile. I think he's been waiting for you. The ride to the 8th floor felt different today, less intimidating, more purposeful. Marianne had spent half the night crafting what she wanted to say, rehearsing the professional boundaries she needed to establish. She would not be swayed by emotion or manipulation. She would be clear, direct, and firm. Tyler showed her into Jackson's office with the same polite efficiency as the day before. This time, Jackson was standing by the window, looking out over the Atlanta skyline. He turned when she entered, hope and uncertainty warring in his expression. You came back, he said simply. I'm here to discuss the job, Marianne clarified, remaining near the door. Not us. Not the past. Jackson nodded, gesturing to the seating area. Of course. Please sit. Marianne moved to the chair farthest from him, setting her purse beside her like a shield. I'm willing to accept the position, but I have conditions. Name them. I report directly to Eleanor, not to you. Any feedback on my performance comes through her. We maintain a strictly professional relationship in the office. No personal conversations, no references to our history. And I need your word that you won't use your position to pressure me about Noah. Jackson listened without interrupting, his face carefully neutral. When she finished, he nodded slowly. Those are reasonable terms. I agree to all of them. And one more thing, Marianne added, meeting his gaze directly. No more surveillance. No more reports. No more anonymous financial support. If you want to be part of Noah's life in any capacity, it will be open and honest with my knowledge and consent. Agreed, Jackson said immediately. I'll terminate the arrangement today. Marianne hadn't expected him to capitulate so easily. She'd been prepared for arguments, for negotiation. His immediate acceptance left her momentarily at a loss. Thank you, she said finally. No, thank you, Jackson replied, his voice soft, for giving Meridian and me a chance. I won't make you regret it. The sincerity in his voice made something shift inside her. A tiny loosening of the knot of anger and hurt she'd carried for 4 years. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But perhaps it was the beginning of something like peace. I should get to my team, she said, rising from the chair. We have a lot of work to do on the new marketing strategy. Jackson stood as well, maintaining a respectful distance. Of course, Eleanor will help you with anything you need. As Marianne turned to leave, he added, And Marianne, when you're ready, if you're ever ready to discuss Noah, I'll be here. She paused at the door, not looking back. I need time, Jackson. I know, he said quietly. I've waited 4 years. I can wait longer if that's what it takes. Tag a sister who showed incredible strength during her hardest season. The weeks that followed settled into an uneasy rhythm. True to his word, Jackson maintained a professional distance. In meetings, he addressed Marianne with the same courteous respect he showed all his senior staff. In the hallways, he nodded politely but never stopped to chat. He routed all feedback on her work through Eleanor, as promised. It should have made things easier. Instead, Marianne found herself increasingly aware of his absence. The careful way he excused himself from social gatherings she attended, the meetings he sent representatives to rather than attend himself if she was presenting. He was honoring their agreement to the letter, giving her the space she'd demanded. So why did it bother her? Perhaps because the distance felt like another form of control. Jackson once again dictating the terms of their relationship, even if those terms were ones she'd set. Or perhaps because the glimpses she caught of him, working late in his office, mentoring young engineers with unexpected patience, donating company time and resources to a children's hospital project, didn't align with the selfish man who'd abandoned her 4 years ago. People changed. She knew that. She herself had transformed from a heartbroken, terrified, expectant mother into a confident professional and devoted parent. Was it so hard to believe Jackson had changed too? These thoughts circled in her mind one evening as she worked late, finalizing the presentation for a major healthcare client. Most of the office had emptied hours ago, but the soft glow of a light from down the hall told her she wasn't entirely alone. Curious, Marianne walked toward it, surprised to find Jackson's office door ajar. He sat at his desk, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by stacks of papers. He looked exhausted, rubbing his eyes in a gesture that reminded her painfully of Noah when he was fighting sleep. She must have made some small sound, because Jackson looked up, startled to find her in his doorway. Marianne, he said, straightening. I didn't realize anyone was still here. I'm finalizing the Westlake presentation, she explained, hovering awkwardly at the threshold. It's easier to concentrate when the office is quiet. Jackson nodded, understanding in his eyes. Noah's with a sitter? My neighbor, Marianne confirmed. She's a retired teacher. Noah adores her. A small, sad smile touched Jackson's lips. That's good. That he has people who care about him. The moments stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Marianne knew she should leave, maintain the boundaries she'd established. But something kept her rooted to the spot. What are you working on? She asked instead, nodding toward the papers scattered across his desk. Jackson hesitated, as if surprised by her interest. The Children's Hospital Project. We're donating a customized version of our patient monitoring system, but there are some privacy concerns with the pediatric data that I'm trying to address. At 11 o'clock at night? He shrugged. The hospital board meets tomorrow. I promised them a solution. Marianne found herself stepping into the office, drawn by the familiar intensity in his expression. The look he got when he was solving a problem that mattered to him. Maybe a fresh perspective would help? Jackson's surprise was evident, but he recovered quickly. I'd appreciate that, actually. Before she could reconsider, Marianne found herself sitting across from him, reviewing the technical specifications and legal concerns. It was strangely easy to fall back into their old rhythm, the way they used to brainstorm together late into the night, building on each other's ideas, challenging assumptions, finding solutions neither would have reached alone. "What if you created a dual-layer encryption system?" she suggested after they'd been working for nearly an hour. One layer for the medical staff with full access, and a more limited layer for the research team that automatically anonymizes the data? Jackson looked up from his notes, a slow smile spreading across his face. That could work. We'd need to modify the permissions architecture. But he trailed off, already scribbling notes. Yes, this could solve it. He glanced up at her, genuine admiration in his eyes. You always did see angles I missed. The compliment, so sincere and unexpected, caught Marianne off guard. For a moment, she glimpsed the man she'd fallen in love with years ago, passionate about making a difference, brilliant but humble enough to recognize others' contributions, working through the night to solve a problem that mattered. The realization was unsettling. It was easier when she could think of Jackson as selfish and callous. The man before her now, the one donating cutting-edge technology to sick children, the one who respected her boundaries even when it clearly pained him, the one who looked at her with such genuine regret, was harder to dismiss. "I should go," she said abruptly, rising from her chair. "It's late, and I promised Noah I'd be there when he wakes up." Jackson nodded, not trying to stop her. "Thank you for your help. The hospital children will benefit from your insight." At the door, Marianne paused, a question that had been nagging at her for weeks finally finding voice. "Why did you really bring me here, Jackson? To Meridian? Was it just guilt? Or did you want something more?" Jackson set down his pen, considering her question with the seriousness it deserved. "When I saw your resume, it felt like fate. A chance to make amends, yes, but also—" He hesitated, then continued with quiet honesty. "I followed your career, Marianne. The work you did at Phoenix Digital was exceptional. Meridian genuinely needs your talent. So yes, I wanted to right a wrong, but I also wanted the best marketing director for my company. You're both." The answer was so practical, so reasonable, that Marianne found herself nodding. "Good night, Jackson." "Good night, Marianne." As she drove home through the quiet Atlanta streets, Marianne found herself remembering another late night, for years earlier, the last time she'd seen Jackson before today. It had been raining, a cold Chicago downpour that matched her mood. She was 14 weeks pregnant, just starting to show, and Jackson was leaving for Singapore the next morning. They'd spent the evening in strained conversation, going over practical matters, how he'd send money. When they'd video chat, his promise to return for the birth. But as the night wore on, Marianne had felt the distance between them growing, becoming something more than physical. Jackson's mind was already in Singapore, already focused on the challenges ahead. When he looked at her, she could see him calculating, weighing his obligations against his ambitions, trying to find a balance that wouldn't require real sacrifice. "I should go," he'd said finally, glancing at his watch. "Early flight tomorrow." Marianne had nodded, suddenly certain of what she needed to do. "Before you leave, there's something I need to tell you." Jackson had paused, his coat half on. "What is it?" "I won't be here when you get back," she'd said quietly. "I'm moving back to Virginia, to be near my mother." "What?" Jackson had looked genuinely shocked. "Marianne, we talked about this. It's just for 6 months, maybe a year at most. There's no need to uproot your whole life." "There is, though," she'd replied, one hand resting protectively on her small bump. "Because I need to build a life that doesn't revolve around waiting for you to decide we're a priority. A life where our child grows up knowing they're enough, exactly as they are, without having to compete for attention or prove their worth." "That's not fair," Jackson had protested. "This isn't about priorities. It's about building something that will benefit all of us in the long run." "Maybe," Marianne had acknowledged, "but I need to be more than an afterthought, Jackson. And our child deserves more than a father who fits them in between business trips." "So that's it." Anger had flashed in his eyes. "You're just making this decision unilaterally? Without even giving me a chance to prove I can make this work?" I'm making the decision I need to make for myself and our baby, Marianne had said, fighting to keep her voice steady. If you want to be part of our lives, you'll find a way. But I won't put my life on hold waiting for you to figure out what matters most. They'd argued then, their voices rising and falling like the storm outside. Jackson had accused her of emotional blackmail, of not understanding the opportunity he'd been given. She'd accused him of treating their relationship like a business transaction, of being just like his father in prioritizing success over love. In the end, he'd left in anger, the door slamming behind him. The next day, Marianne had called her mother, packed her essential belongings, and bought a one-way ticket to Richmond. She'd left no forwarding address, changed her phone number, severed all ties to the life she'd built in Chicago. It had been both an act of self-preservation and a test. If Jackson truly wanted to find her, to be part of their child's life, he would make the effort. When months passed with no word, she'd had her answer. Or so she'd thought. Now, pulling into her driveway, Marianne wondered if she'd been wrong. Not about leaving, that had been the right decision for her and Noah. But perhaps about Jackson's motives. About the man he truly was beneath the ambition and drive. The babysitter, Mrs. Abernathy, greeted her with a warm smile. He was an angel, as always. Went to bed right on time after 2 stories and a glass of water. Thank you for staying so late, Marianne said, walking the older woman to the door. I hope he wasn't too disappointed that I wasn't here for bedtime. Not at all, dear. He told me his mommy was doing important work, just like a superhero. Mrs. Abernathy patted her arm. You're raising a remarkable little boy. After the sitter left, Marianne quietly opened Noah's door, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest as he slept. His dark curls splayed across the pillow, one arm wrapped tightly around the stuffed dinosaur Jackson had unknowingly paid for through one of his anonymous donations. The thought no longer filled her with anger. Instead, she felt a complicated mix of emotions. Gratitude that Noah had never truly wanted for anything, resentment that Jackson had inserted himself into their lives in secret, and a growing curiosity about what kind of father he might be if given the chance. Noah stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Mommy, he murmured sleepily. I'm here, sweetheart, Marianne whispered, moving to sit on the edge of his bed. Go back to sleep. Did you save the day at work? He asked, fighting to keep his eyes open. Marianne smiled, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. I think maybe I did. Just a little bit. That's good, Noah mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. Love you, Mommy. Love you too, my brave boy. To the moon and back. And to the stars and all the way home, he whispered, the words slurring as sleep reclaimed him. Sitting there in the dim glow of Noah's night light, Marianne made a decision. Tomorrow she would talk to Jackson about meeting Noah. Not immediately, not without preparation, but soon. Because regardless of the past, Noah deserved the chance to know his father. And Jackson deserved the chance to know the remarkable little person they had created. The memory of that rainy Chicago night faded, replaced by the reality of her sleeping son and the future that lay before them. Uncertain, complicated, but perhaps richer than the one she had imagined for them alone. The next morning, Marianne arrived at the office early, determined to catch Jackson before his day filled with meetings. She found him in the company kitchen, making coffee with the same focused precision he applied to everything. Do you have a minute? She asked, startling him slightly. Of course, he said, setting down the coffee pot. Is everything okay? I've been thinking, Marianne began, then paused, gathering her courage. About Noah. About you meeting him. Jackson went very still, as if afraid any movement might shatter this moment. And I think it's time, she said simply. Not right away. We need to prepare him, explain things in a way he'll understand. But soon. The hope that bloomed in Jackson's eyes was almost painful to witness. Thank you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I promise, Marianne. I won't let either of you down again. This isn't forgiveness, she clarified, needing him to understand. And it's not for you or even for me. It's for Noah. He deserves to know where he comes from, who he comes from. Jackson nodded, accepting her terms without argument. I understand. However you want to handle this, whatever you think is best for him, I'll follow your lead. The simple deference, so unlike the Jackson who had argued with her that rainy night in Chicago, caught Marianne off guard. Before she could respond, Eleanor appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, she said, glancing between them with barely concealed curiosity. But the Westlake team is here early. They're waiting in the main conference room. We'll be right there, Jackson assured her. When Eleanor had gone, he turned back to Marianne. We can continue this conversation later? Yes, she agreed. After work. As they walked together toward the conference room, Marianne felt a strange sense of déjà vu. The two of them side by side, heading into a meeting, just as they had countless times during their year together in Chicago. But this time, everything was different. This time, they carried 4 years of separation between them, a child who bound them together, and the tentative possibility of a new kind of relationship. Not the romance they'd once shared, but perhaps something equally meaningful. A partnership built on their shared love for Noah. The Westlake presentation was a success, Marianne's innovative marketing strategy complementing Jackson's technical expertise perfectly. As the clients filed out, clearly impressed, Eleanor pulled Marianne aside. Whatever history you two have, she said quietly, it translates to exceptional professional chemistry. I haven't seen Jackson work that seamlessly with anyone since, well, ever. Marianne didn't know how to respond to that observation, so she simply nodded and gathered her materials. As she headed back to her office, her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. Dinner tonight? To discuss Noah. Your choice of restaurant, your terms. She hesitated only briefly before replying. My house. 7:30. After Noah's in bed. I'll order takeout. His response came immediately. I'll be there. Thank you, Marianne. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and emails, but beneath it all ran a current of nervous anticipation. Tonight would mark a turning point, the beginning of whatever new reality they would create for Noah's sake. At home, Marianne went through the evening routine with extra attention, savoring each moment with Noah, his excited recounting of preschool adventures, the way he carefully arranged his dinosaurs before bath time, his serious consideration of which pajamas would give him the best dreams. Mommy? He asked as she tucked him in. Can I ask you something important? Of course, sweetheart. Anything. Noah fidgeted with his comforter, a sign he was working up to something significant. Ethan said his daddy left when he was a baby, but then he came back when Ethan was bigger, and now they do fun things together on weekends. Marianne's heart skipped a beat. Is that so? Noah nodded solemnly. Do you think my daddy might come back someday too? When I'm bigger? The innocent question, asked with such hopeful vulnerability, brought tears to Marianne's eyes. How many times had she wondered if she was doing the right thing, keeping Noah and Jackson apart? How many times had she justified it as protection, when perhaps it had also been punishment, for Jackson's abandonment, for choosing career over family? Actually, she said carefully, I've been thinking about that. Would you like to meet your daddy? Noah's eyes widened. Is he back from his important work in the other country? Yes, Marianne said, the simple truth easier than the complicated reality. He's back, and he'd very much like to meet you. Does he know I like dinosaurs? Marianne smiled, remembering the photo album in Jackson's office. Yes, he knows all about your love for dinosaurs. When can I meet him? Noah asked, excitement building in his voice. Soon, Marianne promised. We need to make some plans first, but soon. Will he like me? The question came in a smaller voice, revealing the insecurity beneath the excitement. Oh, Noah! Marianne gathered him close, her heart breaking for the doubt no child should have to feel. He will love you. How could anyone not love you? You are the most wonderful, kind, smart, brave boy in the whole world. Noah beamed at her praise, his fears momentarily soothed. Can I show him my dinosaur collection when he comes? Absolutely, Marianne assured him. Now time for sleep. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. After one more kiss and their nightly ritual, love you to the moon and back, and to the stars and all the way home. Marianne quietly closed Noah's door and leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she'd just set in motion. There was no turning back now. She'd opened the door to Jackson's presence in Noah's life, and whatever happened next would shape her son's future in ways she couldn't fully predict. The thought was terrifying, but also strangely liberating. For 4 years, she'd carried the full weight of every decision about Noah's life. Now, perhaps that burden could be shared. The doorbell rang precisely at 7:30. Jackson stood on her porch holding a bottle of wine and a small gift bag, looking as nervous as she felt. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "Noah's asleep." "Thank you for this," Jackson said, following her into the modest living room where toys were neatly stacked in colorful bins and framed photos of Noah lined the walls. His eyes lingered on each image, drinking in the moments he'd missed. Noah's first birthday, his first steps, holidays and ordinary days captured in time. "I ordered Thai," Marianne said, gesturing to the coffee table where containers were already arranged. "I remembered it was your favorite." "It still is," Jackson confirmed, handing her the wine. "And this is for Noah." He held out the gift bag. "For when the time is right." Marianne peeked inside to find a plush stegosaurus wearing a tiny lab coat. "His favorite dinosaur," she said, surprised. "How did you know?" "The photos from his birthday party last year," Jackson admitted. "I noticed he had every dinosaur except this one." The reminder of his surveillance still unsettled her, but Marianne set it aside for now. They had more important matters to discuss. Over dinner, they talked about Noah, his personality, his interests, his routine. Jackson listened intently, asking thoughtful questions, absorbing every detail she shared. "He asked about you tonight," Marianne said as they finished their meal. "About meeting his daddy." Jackson set down his fork, his expression a mix of hope and apprehension. "What did you tell him?" "That you're back from working in another country and that you'd like to meet him." She met his gaze directly. "I told him you know about his love for dinosaurs, and that you'll love him." "I already do," Jackson said quietly. "I know that sounds impossible. How can you love someone you've never met? But I've watched him grow from afar, seen his smile in photos, heard stories about his kindness and curiosity. He's part of you and part of me, and I love him for that alone." The simple declaration, spoken with such raw honesty, touched something deep in Marianne's heart. This was the Jackson she'd fallen in love with years ago. Earnest, vulnerable, capable of profound feeling beneath his controlled exterior. "I think we should start slowly," she said, refocusing on the practical. "Maybe a short meeting at first, somewhere Noah feels comfortable. The park near our house, perhaps." Jackson nodded. "Whatever you think is best. I'll follow your lead on this, Marianne. You know him, what he needs, how to protect him. I trust your judgment completely." The deference in his tone, so different from the man who had once made unilateral decisions about their future, didn't escape her notice. "You've changed," she observed. "Yes," Jackson agreed simply. "Losing you and Noah, even though I didn't fully understand what I was losing at the time, changed me. And then watching from a distance as you built this beautiful life without me." He shook his head. "It forced me to confront who I was, who I wanted to be." "And who is that?" Marianne asked, genuinely curious. Jackson considered the question carefully. "Someone worthy of being Noah's father. Someone who puts people before profit, relationships before achievements. Someone who doesn't repeat my father's mistakes." He met her gaze. "I'm still working on it. But I'm trying, Marianne. Every day, I'm trying." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Whatever else had changed in the past 4 years, Jackson's ability to speak his truth hadn't diminished. "Saturday," Marianne said after a moment. "The park at 10 a.m. Noah's usually at his best in the morning, and it gives us the rest of the day to process if needed." "Saturday," Jackson repeated, as if committing it to memory. "Thank you, Marianne, for giving me this chance. I know I don't deserve it." "This isn't about what you deserve," she clarified. "It's about what Noah deserves. The opportunity to know his father, to understand where he comes from." "I understand," Jackson said. And I promise you, I won't let him down. As he rose to leave, his eyes caught on a drawing pinned to the refrigerator. Noah's childish rendering of himself and Marianne, stick figures holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. He's talented, Jackson observed with a smile. He is, Marianne agreed. He loves to draw, just like I did at his age. I remember, Jackson said softly. You used to sketch on napkins at that coffee shop where we met. Little moments of beauty you noticed that everyone else missed. The memory, so specific, so personal, caught Marianne off guard. She'd assumed those small details of their time together had faded for Jackson, overshadowed by the bigger events that followed. The fact that he remembered her napkin sketches, something she herself had almost forgotten, stirred emotions she wasn't prepared to examine. "Good night, Jackson," she said, opening the door. "Good night, Marianne," he replied, stepping onto the porch. "And thank you for everything." As she closed the door behind him, Marianne leaned against it, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. She'd spent 4 years constructing a narrative about Jackson, the ambitious man who'd chosen career over family, who'd abandoned her when she needed him most. That narrative had been her armor, protecting her from the pain of rejection, giving her the strength to build a life on her own terms. But the man who'd sat in her living room tonight, who'd listened with such intensity to stories about Noah, who'd remembered her napkin sketches from 5 years ago, that man didn't quite fit the villain she'd created in her mind. People changed. She had changed. Perhaps Jackson had too. The thought followed her through the quiet house as she cleaned up dinner, checked on Noah one last time, and finally settled into bed. Tomorrow, she would begin preparing her son to meet his father. Whatever happened next, there was no going back to the careful isolation she'd maintained for 4 years. For better or worse, Jackson Westfield was about to become part of their lives again. Saturday dawned clear and crisp, a perfect Atlanta autumn day. Marianne dressed Noah in his favorite dinosaur sweater, answering his excited questions about meeting his father with calm reassurance. "Will he want to play with me?" Noah asked as they walked to the park, his small hand warm in hers. "I'm sure he will," Marianne said. "He's been looking forward to meeting you for a very long time." "As long as I've been looking forward to meeting him?" The innocent question pierced Marianne's heart. "Yes, sweetheart. Just as long." They reached the park a few minutes early, finding a bench near the playground where they could watch for Jackson's arrival. Noah fidgeted beside her, alternating between excitement and nervousness, asking the same questions he'd been asking all morning. "What if he doesn't like me?" he whispered, his biggest fear finding voice once again. "Noah, look at me," Marianne said, kneeling in front of him. "You are the most wonderful little boy in the world. Your daddy will love you exactly as you are. I promise." Noah nodded solemnly, then his eyes widened as he looked past her. "Is that him?" Marianne turned to see Jackson walking toward them, his usual confident stride tempered by obvious nervousness. He dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, carrying a small gift bag that matched the one he'd brought to her house. "Yes," she said, standing and taking Noah's hand. "That's your daddy." Jackson approached slowly, his eyes fixed on Noah with an expression of wonder and trepidation. When he reached them, he knelt down to Noah's level, just as Marianne had done moments before. "Hello, Noah," he said, his voice gentle. "I'm very happy to meet you." Noah studied him with the serious intensity only a 4-year-old could muster. "You're my daddy?" "Yes," Jackson confirmed. "I am." "You were working in another country?" "I was. For a long time. Too long." Noah considered this. "Mommy said you know I like dinosaurs." A smile touched Jackson's lips. "I do know that. In fact," he held out the gift bag. "I brought you something." Noah looked to Marianne for permission, and at her nod, took the bag. His face lit up as he pulled out a book, the Ultimate Dinosaur Encyclopedia for Kids. "It has information about every dinosaur ever discovered," Jackson explained. "Even the newest ones that scientists just found last year." "Wow," Noah breathed, already flipping through the colorful pages. "Thank you." "You're welcome," Jackson said, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly at Noah's positive reaction. I thought maybe we could read it together sometime, if that's okay with you and your mom. Noah looked up at Marianne, who nodded encouragingly. Can we read it now? He asked Jackson. On that bench? And then can you push me on the swings? I'd like that very much, Jackson said, his voice thick with emotion. Marianne watched as they settled on the bench, Noah already pointing out his favorite dinosaurs, Jackson listening with genuine interest to each excited explanation. There was something surreal about seeing them together, the physical resemblance obvious now in the matching curve of their smiles, the identical way they tilted their heads when concentrating. For 4 years, she'd been the center of Noah's world, his only parent, his primary source of love and guidance. Watching him connect so easily with Jackson stirred complicated emotions. Pride in her son's openness, relief that the meeting was going well, but also a twinge of something like loss. Noah's world was expanding beyond her, as it should, but the change was bittersweet. After 20 minutes with the book, Noah tugged Jackson toward the playground, eager to show off his swing skills. Marianne followed at a distance, giving them space while staying close enough to intervene if needed. But her concern proved unnecessary. Jackson was a natural with Noah, attentive and patient, matching his energy without overwhelming him. Higher, Daddy, higher, Noah called from the swing, the title slipping out so naturally that Marianne caught her breath. Jackson's eyes met hers over Noah's head, his expression a mix of joy and disbelief at hearing himself called Daddy for the first time. Marianne offered a small smile of acknowledgement, giving him permission to embrace the moment. The morning stretched into early afternoon, Noah's initial shyness completely forgotten as he led Jackson from the swings to the slide to the climbing structure, chattering nonstop about dinosaurs, his friend Ethan, and his preschool's pet turtle. Jackson absorbed it all, asking questions that showed he was truly listening, responding with a warmth and patience Marianne had never seen in him before. Finally, when Noah's energy began to flag, Marianne suggested they head home for lunch. Would you like to join us? She asked Jackson, surprising herself with the invitation. I'd love to, he said, clearly touched by the offer. As they walked back to the house, Noah between them, occasionally reaching for both their hands when crossing streets, Marianne felt a strange sense of rightness, as if the three of them walking together was the most natural thing in the world. It was an unsettling feeling, one she wasn't ready to examine too closely. At home, Noah insisted on showing Jackson his room, proudly displaying his dinosaur collection and the solar system mobile hanging from his ceiling. Jackson admired everything with genuine interest, asking questions that made Noah beam with pride. Over peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, cut into dinosaur shapes with cookie cutters, Noah asked the question Marianne had been dreading. Are you going to live with us now, Daddy? The innocent query hung in the air, loaded with implications neither adult was prepared to address. Jackson looked to Marianne, letting her take the lead. No, sweetheart, she said gently. Daddy has his own house, but he lives here in Atlanta now, so you'll be able to see him often. Like Ethan sees his daddy on weekends? Something like that, Marianne agreed. We'll figure out all the details soon. Noah seemed satisfied with this answer, moving on to ask Jackson if he had any pets, but the question lingered between the adults, a reminder of the complicated path ahead as they navigated co-parenting after years apart. After lunch, Noah's eyelids began to droop, the excitement of the morning catching up with him. I think it's nap time, Marianne said, recognizing the signs. No nap, Noah protested weakly, even as he leaned against Jackson's leg. I want to play with Daddy more. Your daddy will come back, Marianne assured him. This isn't goodbye forever. It's just goodbye for today. Promise? Noah asked, looking up at Jackson with those eyes so like his father's. I promise, Jackson said solemnly. In fact, if it's okay with your mom, maybe next weekend we could go to the Natural History Museum. They have real dinosaur bones there. Noah's tired face lit up. Can we, Mommy? Please. Marianne nodded. That sounds like a wonderful idea. After Noah was tucked in for his nap, Marianne found Jackson in the living room, looking at the photos on her mantel. a timeline of Noah's life from newborn to present day. "He's amazing, Marianne," Jackson said quietly. "You've done an incredible job with him." "Thank you," she said, accepting the compliment with a small nod. "He made it easy. He's always been a happy child, even during the hard times." Jackson turned to face her, his expression serious. "I want you to know how grateful I am for today, for the chance to know him. I know it couldn't have been an easy decision for you." "It wasn't," Marianne admitted, "but it was the right one. He deserves to know you, and you deserve to know him." "And us?" Jackson asked carefully. "Where do we go from here?" Marianne considered the question, aware of its many layers. "We focus on Noah, on being the best co-parents we can be. The rest, I don't know, Jackson. There's a lot of history between us, a lot of hurt." "I understand," he said, no trace of argument in his tone. "Noah comes first. Always." The simple agreement, so different from the man who had once prioritized his career above all else, struck Marianne anew. People changed, sometimes for the better. "I should go," Jackson said, moving toward the door. "Let you both rest. But thank you, Marianne, for today, for everything." As she closed the door behind him, Marianne felt a sense of completion she hadn't expected. The circle that had broken 4 years ago in that rainy Chicago apartment had begun to mend. Not into what it was before, but into something new, something that might, in time, be even stronger. 6 months later, Marianne stood in the doorway of Noah's room, watching as Jackson read their son a bedtime story. The two of them huddled together beneath the glow of a dinosaur-shaped lamp, Noah's eyes heavy with sleep, but fighting to stay awake for just one more page. The past months had brought changes none of them could have predicted. Jackson had proven himself a devoted father, never missing a scheduled visit, always putting Noah's needs first. He'd rearranged board meetings for preschool performances, learned to make dinosaur-shaped pancakes, built a relationship with his son based on patience, presence, and unconditional love. And somewhere along the way, as they navigated co-parenting and shared responsibilities, Marianne had found herself rediscovering the man she'd once loved. Not the ambitious entrepreneur who'd left her, but the thoughtful, passionate person who'd been buried beneath his father's expectations and his own fears. They weren't a couple again, not in the traditional sense. The wounds of the past had healed but left scars that couldn't be ignored. Yet they'd found a new kind of partnership, a friendship built on mutual respect and their shared love for Noah. "The end," Jackson whispered, closing the book as Noah finally surrendered to sleep. He carefully extricated himself from the bed, tucking the covers around their son before joining Marianne in the doorway. "He didn't even make it to the T-Rex part," he said with a soft smile. "Usually that's his favorite." "He was exhausted," Marianne replied. "The excitement of his birthday party tomorrow has been building all week." They moved to the living room, where birthday preparations were spread across the coffee table, dinosaur-themed decorations, party favors, the special cake order form. "I still can't believe he's turning 5, Jackson said, picking up the dinosaur party hat they'd chosen together. "It feels like I just met him yesterday, and at the same time, like I've known him his whole life." Marianne understood the sentiment perfectly. Time moves differently when you're a parent. The days are long, but the years are short. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, assembling goodie bags for Noah's preschool friends. It was a routine they'd fallen into over the past months. These quiet evenings after Noah was asleep, planning birthday parties or school projects or weekend outings. Co-parenting had evolved from an awkward negotiation into a natural rhythm, a dance they were learning together. "I got the promotion," Marianne said, breaking the silence. "Eleanor told me this afternoon." Jackson looked up, genuine pleasure lighting his face. "That's wonderful. Chief Marketing Officer, you've earned it, Marianne. The Westlake campaign was brilliant." "Thank you," she said, accepting the compliment with the confidence she developed over the past months. "It feels good to be recognized for my work, not just as—" She trailed off, not wanting to reopen old wounds. "Not just as Noah's mother or my ex," Jackson finished for her. "I understand. And for what it's worth, Everyone at Meridian knows you earned that promotion on merit alone. Your work speaks for itself. The simple acknowledgement meant more than Marianne had expected. For so long, she defined herself in relation to others. Jackson's girlfriend, Noah's mother, the woman who'd been left behind. Reclaiming her professional identity, being valued for her mind and talents, had been an essential part of her healing. "I've been thinking," Jackson said, carefully folding a paper dinosaur for one of the goodie bags, "about the future, about us." Marianne tensed slightly. They'd been careful to keep their relationship focused on Noah, to avoid complicating their co-parenting with romantic entanglements. But lately, she'd felt something shifting between them. A warmth in Jackson's gaze that lingered longer than necessary. A flutter in her own chest when their hands accidentally touched. "What about us?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. Jackson set down the paper dinosaur, giving her his full attention. "I know we agreed to focus on Noah, to put the past behind us without trying to recreate what we had before. And that's been the right approach. But Marianne," he hesitated, then continued with careful honesty, "I find myself falling in love with you all over again. Not the you from 4 years ago, but the woman you are now, strong, independent, an incredible mother and professional. And I wonder if there might be room in our future for something more than co-parenting." The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. 4 years ago, such openness would have been foreign to the ambitious, guarded man Jackson had been. But like her, he had changed, softened in some ways, strengthened in others. "I'm not asking for an answer now," he added quickly. "I just wanted you to know where I stand. Whatever you decide, it won't affect my commitment to Noah or my respect for you." Marianne looked at him, really looked at him, seeing both the man she'd once loved and the person he'd become. The silver at his temples that hadn't been there 4 years ago. The laugh lines around his eyes from months of playing with Noah. The humility and patience he'd developed through loss and redemption. "I don't know what the future holds for us, Jackson," she said honestly. "There's still so much history between us, so many complicated emotions. But I'm open to the possibility, to seeing where this path leads." It wasn't a declaration of love or a promise of forever. It was something more valuable. An acknowledgement that healing was possible, that second chances could be earned, that the end of one story might be the beginning of another. Jackson smiled, understanding the gift she was offering. "That's all I can ask for. The chance to show you, day by day, that I'm not the man who left you in Chicago. That I've learned what truly matters." "And what is that?" Marianne asked, though she already knew the answer. "Family," Jackson said simply. "Not as an obligation or an afterthought, but as the center of everything. The foundation that gives all other achievements meaning." It was the lesson they both learned, though by different paths. Marianne through the daily joys and struggles of single motherhood, Jackson through the painful recognition of what he'd lost by following his father's example. "We should finish these goodie bags," Marianne said, gesturing to the half-completed party favors. "Tomorrow's going to be chaos with 15 preschoolers hopped up on dinosaur cake." Jackson laughed, accepting the change of subject with grace. "I still think we should have hired professional entertainment. Noah specifically requested that his daddy be the one to lead the dinosaur hunt." Marianne reminded him with a smile. "Apparently, you're the world's foremost expert on where dinosaurs hide in backyards." "A title I wear with pride," Jackson said, his eyes crinkling with genuine happiness. As they returned to their preparations, working side by side in comfortable companionship, Marianne felt a sense of peace she hadn't expected to find when she'd walked into Jackson's office 6 months ago. The journey from betrayal to forgiveness, from single parenthood to co-parenting, from anger to understanding. It hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been setbacks and difficult conversations, moments of doubt and lingering hurt. But watching Jackson now, his head bent in concentration as he carefully wrote each child's name on a party favor, Marianne knew they had created something valuable from the ashes of their past. Not just for Noah's sake, but for their own. A partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. A friendship rooted in genuine care. And perhaps, in time, something more. 2 years later, on a perfect autumn day much like the one when Noah first met his father, Marianne stood in the garden of Eleanor Vance's historic Atlanta home, a bouquet of wildflowers in her hands and her son, now 7 and proudly dressed in his first suit, waiting to walk her down the aisle. "Are you ready, Mommy?" Noah asked, his expression serious with the importance of his role. Marianne smiled down at him, her heart full. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm ready." The path to this day hadn't been straight or simple. After Noah's 5th birthday, she and Jackson had taken things slowly, dating cautiously while maintaining their focus on co-parenting, careful not to rush into a relationship that might confuse their son if it didn't work out. There had been setbacks and difficult conversations, moments when old wounds reopened and trust had to be rebuilt. But through it all, Jackson had remained steady, patient, present, proving through consistent action rather than words that he had truly changed. He'd supported her career advancement without trying to control it, respected her independence while making space for partnership, and most importantly, never once wavered in his commitment to Noah. 6 months ago, during a family trip to the mountains, Jackson had proposed, not with grand gestures or public displays, but quietly, with Noah as a willing co-conspirator who had helped pick the ring and plan the moment. "I'm not asking you to forget the past," Jackson had said, kneeling before her with Noah at his side. "I'm asking you to believe in our future, to let me spend the rest of my life showing you and Noah how much you both mean to me." Now, as the music began and Noah tugged gently at her hand, Marianne took a deep breath and stepped onto the petal-strewn path. Ahead, Jackson waited beneath an arch of autumn flowers, his eyes finding hers with a look of such profound love and gratitude that it brought tears to her eyes. The small gathering of friends and family, including Mrs. Abernathy, who had become like a grandmother to Noah, and Eleanor, whose mentorship had helped Marianne rise to executive leadership at Meridian, smiled as Noah proudly escorted his mother down the aisle, his small face solemn with the responsibility. When they reached Jackson, Noah placed Marianne's hand in his father's with a ceremonial flourish they'd practiced for weeks. "I give you my mommy," he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You have to promise to take super good care of her forever and ever." Laughter rippled through the gathering, but Jackson knelt to his son's level, his expression serious. "I promise, Noah. Your mommy and you are the most important people in my world. I will take care of you both forever and ever." Satisfied, Noah took his place beside them, beaming with pride as the ceremony began. The vows they exchanged weren't about perfect love or fairy tale endings. They were promises grounded in the reality of their journey, acknowledging past mistakes, celebrating hard-won growth, and committing to a future built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the deep, abiding love that had survived separation, hurt, and ultimately, forgiveness. "I choose you," Marianne said, her voice steady despite the emotion welling in her chest. "Not the man I thought you were years ago, but the man you've become. The father who never misses a school play, the partner who celebrates my success as his own, the person who learned that true strength lies in vulnerability and presence." "I choose you," Jackson replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "Not as the perfect solution to my loneliness or the missing piece of my life, but as the extraordinary woman you are, strong enough to raise our son alone, brave enough to give me a second chance, wise enough to know that love isn't about grand gestures but daily choices to show up, listen, and grow together." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, Noah cheered loudest of all, his joy a testament to the family they had built. Not perfect or without scars, but resilient, authentic, and deeply loving. At the reception, as twilight settled over the garden and fairy lights twinkled in the trees, Jackson pulled Marianne close for their first dance. "Are you happy?" he asked softly, his arms secure around her waist. Marianne looked up at the man who had once broken her heart and now held it with such careful tenderness. Beyond him, she could see Noah dancing with Eleanor, his laughter carrying across the garden. Her son was thriving, confident, kind, secure in the knowledge that he was deeply loved by both his parents. And she herself had found a balance she'd never thought possible: professional fulfillment, personal happiness, and a partnership based on genuine equality and respect. "Yes," she said simply, resting her head against his chest. I am. The future stretched before them, unwritten and full of possibility. Whatever came next, they would face it together, not as the people they had been 4 years ago, but as the stronger, wiser versions of themselves that pain and growth had forged. Outside, the Atlanta night was quiet, stars visible despite the city lights. Inside the warmly lit garden, surrounded by those who had witnessed their journey, two people who had once lost each other celebrated finding their way back, not to what had been, but to what could be. And nearby, their son danced with abandon, secure in the knowledge that he was loved completely by both his parents, together and separately, in all the ways that mattered. To the moon and back, Jackson whispered, echoing the promise they now both made to Noah each night. Marianne smiled up at her husband, her heart full. And to the stars and all the way home. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Life rarely offered those. But it was something better. A real beginning, hard won and honest, with eyes wide open to both the challenges and possibilities that lay ahead. A story of redemption and second chances, of forgiveness not freely given but earned through consistent action and genuine change. A story, Marianne realized as she danced in her husband's arms with their son twirling nearby, that was still being written, its most beautiful chapters yet to come. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories of resilience and redemption. Remember, Queens, it's never too late for a new beginning. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters come after the hardest ones.